Good evening, everyone. Thank y'all for being here tonight. I do apologize for my tardiness. We call to order our July 6, 2023 Ascension Parish Council meeting. Coach Thomas, will you please lead us in the invocation and a pledge?
Yes, sir. Let's bow our heads. Most Heavenly Father, as we assemble ourselves here tonight, we're very grateful and so thankful to be here. We ask, Lord, that you bless each and every person under the sound of my voice. Bless the meeting. And we ask, Lord, that you bless Ascension Parish. Father, as we leave this place tonight, we ask that you allow each of us to get home to our families safe and sound. We ask this in Jesus' name. And we all say it, amen.
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 Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate that.
Well,
Roll call, Ms. Secretary. So I do know Mr. Robert's here, but presently Mr. Robert, Mr. Turner, Ms. Casso, and Mr. Wagaspack are absent, but I do believe Mr. Robert will be back here shortly. Chair's additions. The chair has no additions tonight. Public comment sign-in period. If anyone would like to speak on any agenda item, please come up to the our podium right here. We have red and green cards. Fill it out, your name, and what agenda item you would like to speak on. And whenever we get to that item, I'll call you up for a comment. Item number 5, Parish President's Report.
Good evening, Council. Thank you, Chair. I know we have a full agenda, so I will keep my report very brief. I hope everyone had a great 4th of July holiday. I'd like to recognize and thank the City of Donaldsonville for hosting their annual fireworks on the river. It was a great family event at Crescent Park, and I'm grateful it was made possible by the many sponsors and the volunteers in our own community. I know I saw Coach out there. It was a great event, Coach. I think you would agree. We had a lot of people out. It looked like they had a great time. So kudos to everybody that took part in that event. Thank you, Chair. That ends my report.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Coach, you got something?
yes, sir. I just like to just collaborate on what Mr. President just said. The City of Donaldsonville put on a real good show. We had a lot of people, and I was very happy as I walked out to see our president here on the West Bank of Ascension. We appreciate you coming and enjoy the hospitality that was so well enjoyed. So thank the mayor of Donaldsonville and city council, and did a real great job, and the people in itself. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Coach. All right, agenda item number 6, the consent agenda. Ms. Cinnamon.
Adoption of regular council meeting minutes of May 4, 2023. Adoption of regular council meeting minutes of May 18, 2023. Approval of intergovernmental agreement between the parish and the Amite River Basin Commission to provide the parish's drone equipment, including an operator to pilot said drone to Amite River Basin Commission for purposes of obtaining aerial footage of the Amite River Basin Comet Diversion Project. The video will contain the Ascension Parish Channel 21 logo. Approval of renewal of 1-year security services contract between Ascension Parish Government, Lamar-Dixon Expo Center, and Merchant Security Services, Inc. in the amount of $104,000 to provide one unarmed uniformed security support officer 4:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. 7 days a week to provide proactive deterrence to criminal activity, enforce policies and procedures, and aid management, employees, and guests. Approval of participation in the ITEP under the 2018 rules, Honeywell International, Inc. Approval of intergovernmental agreement between the Parish of Ascension Parish Sheriff and the Ascension Parish Sheriff to facilitate the establishment of a needs assessment and strategic plan for opioid awareness to determine how to effectively use the settlement funds. The parish shall reimburse the sheriff for the costs associated with the expenses incurred for the needs assessment and strategic plan for opioid awareness program, not to exceed $100,000. Approval of renewal of participation agreement with St. Bernard Parish Sheriff for housing of juveniles. Approval of Amendment Number 2 to Cooperative Endeavor Agreement between Ascension Parish Government and Nichols State University to allow the university to operate and administer the West Ascension Early Childhood Development Center at the B. Lemon Building on Mississippi Street in Donaldsonville. Approval of request for funding in the amount of $25,000 over a 5-year period for Volunteer Ascension. Approval to make second installment payment of $42.5 for professional liability coverage for Ascension Parish Government healthcare workers. Total contract amount of $89,122.50 with Iron Shore. Bid results and approval to enter into contract for asphalt concrete pavement preservation 2023 with the lowest responsive bid submitted by Material Resources, Inc. in the amount of $948,192.50. Approval of renewal of memorandum of agreement between the Department of Army and co-applicants, the Ascension Parish Government and the East Ascension Consolidated Gravity Drainage District Number 1 for the expedite and processing of Section 10404 permit applications. Approval for President Quintmall to enter into an agreement with the Capital Region Planning Commission Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Safe Streets for All Action Plan Development Grant with the 20% local match paid for by the Ascension Parish of $19,546.79. Approval of Amendment Number 1 Grant Extension to the Memorandum of Understanding between the National Recreation and Park Association and Ascension Parish Government Recreation Department for the South Louisiana Fairgrounds La La Regira Field Sport Renovation Project to be extended through June 20th, 2024. Total grant amount of $40,000.
Motion to approve minutes.
Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda for further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Item 7A under general business, cooperative endeavor agreement with TNT
We have it.
Building. I see that that was a finance committee recommendation. Why is it not on the consent agenda? Why is it on general business?
It would be on general business if it was not unanimous.
Because it was not unanimous?
It was
Right.
not unanimous.
Correct.
They had one nay against it
Okay.
in the finance.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
Okay. All right, I hear no motions to remove anything from the consent agenda. I do have a motion from Mr. Robert and a second by Mr. Cagnolati. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Item 7A, general business, approval for President Quintmall to approve and sign a cooperative endeavor agreement with TNT Building Consultants for use of parking at Lamar Dixon at a cost of $25,000 per month to include parking lot upgrades and a complete turf field for Lamar Dixon's sole use. Mr. Rogers, would you like to, I have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Lambert. Any questions, any objections?
I do have a question, objection. Both.
Okay.
I want to address the issue of the Lamar Dixon parking lot.
Okay.
I addressed the issues in the finance committee, which is why this is on the regular agenda today. I also want to let everyone know in full disclosure that I am or have been contacted, and a business that I'm part of has been contacted about doing parking lots. Has nothing about doing parking for parking lots.
Okay.
Which has nothing to do with this particular deal. But just to make sure, because I don't want to show any conflict, so I want to object, and I'm going to vote no. But I do want to say that if this passes, or that if this doesn't pass, we will do zero parking lot business with Ascension Parish, including the current deal that we've been talked to or approached by with the parish and doing parking for the same type deal. I'm not really saying this to you. I'm saying this in general. I know you probably don't know what I'm talking about.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm just for ethics reasons, I'm making sure it's known that I have an interest in a different parking lot that I don't really have an interest in. So my objection is this is not a good idea. It's a terrible idea. You have a 2-lane road that you're about to put 4,000 vehicles on twice a day. You can split it up into 2 shifts of 2,000 vehicles.
Joe, if you give me a second.
Hold on.
I don't want to, this is,
No, I'm not. Let me finish speaking.
well, are you sure that you're doing this and it's not going to be an ethical violation for what you do? I'm just kind of looking out for you.
I appreciate that. But what I'm saying is a school, an average high school has, say, 2,000 kids, maybe, I mean, when I was in high school, around 2,000 kids, maybe more. What is it? Around that, right? Okay, you don't have 2,000 kids driving. You have a lot of people riding buses, all right? And then you have them, one shift of people going to school and one shift of people leaving school. And it's still a nightmare in any two-lane areas, in any two-lane intersections where you have traffic or where you have any type of commerce. So imagine doubling that. Now we have a shift of people coming while one's going. So that's all I'm saying. If anybody else wants to join me and vote no, and I would really advise Travis, but he's not here, because in his district, I ride down this road daily, and it's going to be a nightmare for a lot of people in that area. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments from Mr. Rogers? Yeah, Mr. Cagley.
Well, no, I did want to just clarify that we will do 0 parking lot for the parish if this goes through. Also, we were approached by this. We didn't go look for it. And just like anything else, there's deals that will never happen. This will be one of them. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Cagley.
Just a couple of questions, Ron.
Sure.
When will the construction begin?
As soon as possible. As soon as possible. The construction to create the parking lot?
Yeah,
Yeah, as soon as possible.
as soon as possible. In other words, when the
When do
agreement's
we expect
signed,
to get-
they can proceed, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And what about construction completion as far as having it ready?
We're hoping to have the first cars on middle September, beginning of October, and that initial batch of cars is about 300 cars total.
So they're gonna build it and maintain it at their cost, and they have basically complete control over the operation of it. But if we have an event, we can approach them, and if there's space, we can use some parking.
Right, which
For
is
events.
why we were super excited about the size that these guys were going to create with the festival ground area. The leveling, the line-based lots will allow us, once these guys are gone, to park up to 2,000 cars, 3,000 cars for these major events that we could bring in. Their plans are starting with around 300 cars.
The other thing is at the end, there's a 5-year term, and then an option of 5 years. We don't have any say-so in that. The agreement says that TNT makes that call, and if nothing is done, it's an automatic renewal. Is that right?
If nothing is done, as far as if we do not have any grievances, it rolls over automatically.
Okay. And just kind of a weird question, common sense question on my part. At the end of the term, will the site be restored to its original condition, or we want it?
No, we want to keep it. That's a huge benefit for us.
Okay.
One of the biggest things that I run into when I'm speaking to promoters, especially for outdoor festivals, we show them this beautiful festival ground that we have, and they say the same thing. Look at the problems the Balloon Festival ran into. You can't drive vehicles on it. You know, if it rains a little bit, you're pretty much washed out. This will allow the lot to be similar to our open lot in the front and our 2 bigger open lots, where it's line-based, it's hard, you can drive vehicles on top of it, there is no rut. The other thing this allows us to do, which we don't have the opportunity to do now, is use that festival ground during disaster recovery, which, as you guys know, we can never have enough space for disaster recovery. The only thing we could use it for before was landing a Black Hawk and letting the guys get their feet wet trying to make it to dry land. So we were really excited about this opportunity and the improvements that just making that lot usable will have for us and the parish.
Okay. Now, just a statement I want to make. I spoke to the sheriff today, and he knew nothing about this personally. Somebody may have spoken to his staff, but he told me, and I just think it would have been a good idea for the administration to touch base with the sheriff, who's our primary law enforcement officer and traffic control officer for the parish. I just thought I'd make that comment.
I talked to the sheriff today, so we talked about the project, and he didn't seem to have any issues with it. But I just want council to know I'm a full supporter of this project. This is what we need to do to enhance Lamar Dixon. This is nothing different than the great soccer fields, which is used by thousands of individuals in this parish. It's become the place to go play soccer. This is no good. This is an enhancement. This is for the future recreation. This is for an enhancement of that area. It's one of the reasons why the city of Gonzales limestone their parking lot for the Jambalaya Festival, because it had people trucking through mud, the festivals and all. This is almost exactly the same concept. So we're going to have this as a use to where before we just didn't. So there's a ton of benefits to this, and I'm in full support of it. I think this is just essentially just enhancing our facility for the future.
I'm not against it either. I'm just saying the sheriff told me that in the past, when they had a balloon festival, they contacted him way ahead of time.
Yeah, we really
about
don't need
traffic
him
impact.
in
And when they
this
had other
endeavor.
concerts and stuff, he got called into meetings, and they would talk about it with his traffic control people. He found out about this today, is what he told me.
Yeah, I talked to him, but we really don't need him for this. But if we do, we would, anytime we have an event where we require the sheriff's assistance, we do so. But when we don't need to involve him on absolutely every single thing we do. So this was one of those cases.
Okay.
But thank
It
you.
would have been a nice courtesy.
Sure.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Lawler?
Kyle, I just want to clarify, because I don't understand this. So we'll still be able to have a festival on there. We'll just work with this group that if we have the opportunity to have some outdoor festival, we'll work with them and be able to basically run it back for them to have. big
Sure,
joint festivals.
absolutely. And also, it's in our contract that should there be a state of emergency, should we go into a disaster recovery, we have use of the space.
And we're also getting a stadium, correct? I call it a stadium, but like a
Yeah,
turf
part of
field.
this agreement is a sports field, a AstroTurf sports field with the capabilities to add in amphitheater, horseshoe-style seating. So much like Ohio State, much like Harvard, where they have horseshoe-style football stadium seating. What this would allow us to do with the open end is there are turf covers that we can bring in, put a stage on the open end, let people bring chairs or blankets on the ground of the field, sit in the stands, and kind of give you that amphitheater style atmosphere. And then when it's not used for that, it will be a great place to, have a football game, or practice baseball, or when it's raining outside. Or
We could actually host Guatemala and Honduras,
yes, we can.
like Baton Rouge couldn't do. We could actually host an international soccer team.
We can host a lot of things Baton Rouge can't.
I don't know if you know this, but they actually called Dutchtown, and they were about to move that game to Dutchtown into Ascension Parish. Just there was a communication issue with the storm, actually, that blocked some lines of communication. But this is going to be an opportunity we could actually host an international game, which is amazing, something Baton Rouge couldn't do.
We're excited about it.
So it's going to be great for Ascension Parish.
Yeah, Mr. Lambert?
Yeah. Also, Kyle, what we have on the books now in DOTD with the roundabouts, their staff, everyone has looked over what's on the way to, we're going to have to find some different routes here on this. So River Road, different things is going to have to take some of this off. Have y'all looked at all the projects that's on the books?
We have, and we've been in
Okay.
contact with those guys, and I think we have the capability with our back gate to use Ashland a lot more than it's been used.
Yeah.
We're excited about that, and just kind of mitigating the traffic on 30. And we see this as, we're only starting off with 300 cars or so, and that may move to 500. It'll be a slow progression. It's not a storm, so nothing's going to happen without, for 60 to 90 day seeing it in the future coming. And then that will give us the opportunity to make sure that, the plan's in place, everybody's comfortable, we're moving cars to where we're supposed to be moving cars. But these buses that are going to take these guys to their spot, these are double-decker buses, 80-plus people per bus. So you got to think, that's 80 cars off of 30, every bus we put out there.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, I do have an objection. Ms. Secretary, can we please take roll call?
Councilman Robert,
I'm going to abstain.
Councilman Orgeron,
Yes.
Councilman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Lawler,
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati,
Yes.
Councilman Mason,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Melanson.
Yes. All right, 7 yeas and 1 abstain. Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you, Kyle. Agenda item 7B, approval of sewer development fee waiver for DeLone Estate subdivision. This is sponsored by myself, Ms. Casso, and Mr. Lambert.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Cagnolati. Any questions, any objections? Hearing none, so move. Item 7C, approval of third-party sewer ownership waiver for DeLone Estates.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Lawler. Any questions, any objections? Hearing none, so move. 7D, approval of corrected official journal bid, the Gonzales Weekly Citizen.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Cagnolati. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Introduction of ordinance, as a reminder, we just need one motion to introduce. 8A, introduction of ordinance, budget amendment number 3, approval to amend 2023 Budget Finance Committee recommendation.
Motion.
We have a motion introduced by Mr. Mason. 8B, introduction of ordinance to accept the donation and transfer of title to an emergency response boat from the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office to the Parish of Ascension Fire District Number 1.
Motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawler to introduce. Moving on to our public hearing ordinances. 9A, this is a public hearing or comments on proposed animal shelter sites as requested by the council, which were 15460 Airline Highway in Prairieville in Mr. Lawler's district, 41597 Weber City Road, Gonzales in Mr. Cagnolati's district, and 40532 Black Bayou Road Extension in Mr. Wagaspec's district. And I do have one speaker. I have Miss Kimberly Christie, who is neutral but would like to speak.
Good evening. Good to see everybody. I live in the home directly adjacent to that property. I'm neutral on it.
Which property is that, Miss Christie?
The animal shelter on Airline Highway.
Okay, the airline. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I live directly adjacent to it. And I just want to voice 3 concerns. It's concerns that everyone would have. Number 1, the smell. I would imagine that the design would handle the excrement from the animals so that it wouldn't be any smell outside the building. Number 2 would be the noise. My dad's 93 years old. He has enough hard time sleeping. We don't need dogs barking all night. So if you could soundproof the building, that would make us happy. And the third one is the big one, and that's drainage. I have a picture here. We don't have can't project it up on the screen. But on a rainy season, not a real bad rainy day, you can see the water coming up pretty close to the house that sits on that property. You build that property up, and it's going to backflow into my yard. So if there could be drainage improvements, that would be great. We have never flooded. Even 2016, the water didn't come close to the house. But we're having 100-year floods, rain, sometimes twice, 3 times a year. So it's starting to concern us. We do have flood insurance. But if we could do some drainage improvements in that area, they're not here, but my neighbors on 929, on a regular rainy day, not a rainy season, they get 6 inches of water in their yard. They live directly across from that baseball park on 929 Post Office Road. So we really are in need of drainage improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christie. Ms. Lawler, you'd like to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to add, Ms. Christie, we hear your concerns. Spoke with one of your other, Mr. Aguilar had called me today about the concerns. And we talked to the Animal Shelter Planners of America also about, number 1, the smell. They've assured us that the animals are going to be inside most of the time. That's where they're going to be using the bathroom, but they do control for that. And it will be incumbent upon CARA to make sure that the grounds are maintained. And if they're going to be running the shelter and helping us with that, they're going to maintain that, and that's something that's going to be very important. The sound is also a concern, and one of the things that we have discussed is whether by ordinance or by contract with the CEA, with the shelter, somehow regulating that the animals have to be inside by at least 8 p.m. in addition to soundproofing the building. We feel that way if the dogs are inside, that's one step keeping the sound down. Number 2, if we can soundproof the building and the outside of the building with fencing on the outside, that should offer a dual barrier to any sound. We want to make sure it looks nice and it's good for the neighbors. As far as the drainage goes, I mean, y'all know we've improved our drainage studies and our requirements. This should benefit the area overall. The other thing that I'd like to bring up is there's one more part. You know, right now we're doing a survey of the property, we are doing an appraisal of the property, and we're doing a wetlands study of the property. We need to get with Shelter Planners of America to make sure that the design that they have, we can configure that design to fit the property. So this is an encouragement to the Animal Services Board, or if we can tell Animal Shelter, which we can, tell Animal Shelters of America to spend the $1,000 and make sure that this building is going to fit on there, and if not, formulate the building. I mean, you can always move a design around to make sure it fits on the property. It's not as important on the other two properties because of the shape of those, but this one has some angular shapes on it, so we want to make sure that can fit. We'd prefer not to go too far into this process without doing that. So, you know, I know we can't take action on that tonight to tell animal shelters, was it Shelter Planners of America, to spend that $1,000. They have it in the budget. We want to move forward with getting that done before we go too far in this. So that's all I have, but we do hear your concerns, Ms. Christie and Mr. Aguilar, whoever you are. I know he's watching on TV. That we're going to try and take care of that because we want this to be good neighbors for everybody.
Ms. Cagliari, you had a comment? No? You good? Okay. Okay, good. Anybody else have a comment on the potential site of animal shelter? I will say, as of right now, I believe the property adjacent to Miss Christie is the best location that we have come across as far as, you know, checking all the boxes. You know, unless something pops up, I would encourage Animal Services Board and the council to start taking the proper steps to move forward with that location until we hit a roadblock. So I did just want to mention that. And at the same time, so whenever we're doing construction, you know, I hope that we're taking amongst ourselves and administration, right, to not only mitigate any potential new construction, but also improve that drainage area, you know, for the existing neighbors. Ms. Scott?
I'll echo the comments by you and Aaron about that site being probably my most favorite. The other two, the one on Weber City Road will have some residential nearby and not too far from Walmart, so that could create some issues. And DOTD will be making improvements at Weber City and Roddy Road, and it's right adjacent to that property, so it may affect that. And Black Bayou Road, it's a wraparound and commercial dentist's office, and there's a lot of other commercial development in that area, so I think that's the number one on the airline is be my pick. Thank you.
Mr. Ogeron.
Do we know if there's been a wetlands impact study that's been done on this property?
They're working on that now.
They're working on that now?
We have ELOS. I believe they're doing wetlands delineation on all proposed properties, just to
Right.
make sure.
Who's leading that charge?
With ELOS, I don't know who would be administration,
Mr. Quintmore, do you know who's in charge of
but it might be.
the studies for these three properties?
Administration was asked to be pulled off of this, so Cinnamon has taken care of all this, so you
Oh, okay, I'm
ask her.
sorry. I wasn't at that meeting.
ELOS is doing the wetland
ELOS is-
delineation.
Okay.
Of course, they've been out there once, some of them have, and they're going to do one more visit out to the wetlands in person, to each property in person. I spoke with them today about it.
I believe it was a few meetings ago. It was, at the time, 7 properties with a proposal of like $16,000 to $2,000, $2,500 per property, but we narrowed it down to these 3. And I haven't got an update. I guess it's been a month or so. I haven't heard anything since, but ELOS does have an approved contract from us to perform the wetlands delineation.
And the appraisals will be ready towards the end of July. On all 3.
Once they do that, are we gonna run their study past the Army Corps of Engineers to get a confirmation from them? They're gonna sign off on it? How does
Wait,
that work?
I
But
think they
ELOS
send
actually
that-
does all of our wetlands permitting for us,
Yeah, okay.
with the Corps, so they would, if we move forward, ELOS would be the entity who would actually have to go apply and get that permit for the
Perfect.
parish.
I'm just recalling a situation I had 25 years ago. And Corps came out and they saw one palmetto plant and said, this is wetlands, and nixed an entire project. So I just want to make sure that we're on top of it. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Any other comments? I don't know if you get anybody. Okay, all right, moving on. Item 9A, reading of an ordinance, budget amendment number 2, approval to amend the 2023 budget. Mr. Kenneth.
Thank you. An ordinance to amend the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2023 operating and capital budget for the parish of Ascension, adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on the 17th day of November 2022. Section 1, the Ascension Parish Council hereby ordains that the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2023 operating and capital budgets for the parish of Ascension is hereby amended, approved, and appropriated as follows. Operating budget, Juvenile Justice Program Fund, funds to be used to start up, maintain, and operate the B. Lemon location of early childhood education. Expenditures and other financing uses, professional services, $500,000. This ordinance having been submitted to a vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
I have a motion to open public hearing by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Lawler.
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Lawler.
Motion to move the ordinance.
We have a
Second.
motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Cagnolati and a second by Mr. Lawler. Any objection?
This side is doing all the work.
Hearing none,
No, but
so
good work,
moved.
guys. That was good work.
They're in tandem over there. 9E, reading of an ordinance to amend Appendix 2, Section 17-2045, appointments of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Developmental Code to add a requirement of a planned unit development, a PUD, by the Zoning Commission for multi-family residential apartments.
Whereas the parish of Ascension desires to require a planned unit development, PUD approval for all apartment developments, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, Appendix 2, Section 17-2045, apartments be amended and supplemented as further described in Exhibit A attached here to and made a part hereof. Repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby henceforth repealed. Severability, if any provision of this ordinance is held to be invalid, such invalidity shall not affect other provisions herein which can be given effect without the invalid provisions. And to this end, the provisions of this ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. Effective date, the ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance having been submitted to a vote, the vote thereon is as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
Motion to open public hearing by Mr. Cagnolati, seconded by Mr. Robert. Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Lawler. And before I get a motion to move the ordinance, Mr. Eric Poche, he caught me before the meeting on page 2 of the of Table A. There was a typo.
Yes, that
Right,
would,
so in this one, right, so in the C5 category, it says PUD, but if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to say CU.
yes, it's under transmission towers and it's supposed to read conditional use on, and that's on item H, I, and J, and it's also in items Q, R, and S, where the zoning tables are.
Let me see. Oh, I'm sorry, I called you up
That's all right.
one ordinance too early.
That's all right.
But what so it's HIJ?
Second.
Yes, it's H, I, J to amend the Appendix 1 zoning tables, and then Q, R, S to amend Appendix 1 zoning tables for C5. The first one being for the PUD,
Okay. So it's actually,
for the apartments, I mean.
so it's actually just J and S. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone.
That's all right.
Okay, I have a motion to move the ordinance as is by Mr. Mason,
Second.
a second by Mr. Cagnolati. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Item 9H, reading of an ordinance to amend Appendix 1 zoning tables of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Developmental Code to add a planned unit development of PUD for multi-family residential apartments.
The purpose of this ordinance is to revise language in the permitted uses by district zoning table in Appendix 1 of the Unified Land Development Code to add planned unit developments for multifamily apartments. Whereas the Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, And whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body within this jurisdiction, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4th, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of the parish, and whereas this code was incorporated as Appendix 1, zoning tables of the Parish Unified Land Development Code adopted February 18, 2021, and be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the permitted uses by district zoning table in Appendix 1 of the Unified Land Development Code is hereby amended as follows. These changes are adopted as follows. See attached zoning tables Exhibit A. Severability in the event any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. Exhibits, land use tables, Appendix 1. Adoption of this ordinance having been submitted to a vote.
Motion to open public hearing.
Have a motion to open the public hearing by Mr. Robert. A second by Mr. Mason. Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Robert. And I apologize, so this is the ordinance that Mr. Poche would like us to make an amendment under the C5 to eliminate the PUD and change it to CU, to conditional use.
I'll make that,
I'll second that.
I'll make that amendment.
So Mr. Lawler made the amendment to change the C5 on transmission towers on Table A to CU, and Mr. Robert seconded. Okay, any objection? All right. The amendment passes. Now we need to actually vote on the ordinance.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Mason. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. 9K, reading of an ordinance to amend Appendix 2 of Ascension Parish Unified Land Developmental Code, creating a new zoning district designated Conservation 5, C5.
The purpose of this ordinance is to revise language in Development Code in Appendix 2 of the Unified Land Development Code, where Ascension Parish local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to create a new zoning designation to be identified as Conservation 5, C5, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4th, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of the parish, and whereas this code was incorporated as Appendix 2 Development Code of the Parish Unified Land Development Code adopted December 17, 2009, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Development Code in Article 2 of the Unified Land Development Code is hereby amended and supplemented as further described as in Exhibit A, attached here to and made a part hereof, and repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith or hereby and henceforth repealed. Severability, in the event that any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portion of the ordinance. Effective date, the ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance having been submitted to a vote thereon as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
Motion to open public hearing by Mr. Cannavati, second by Mr. Mason.
Close.
Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Cannavati, second by Mr. Mason.
Motion to move the ordinance.
Motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Cannavati, seconded by Mr. Mason. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. 9N, reading of an ordinance to revise language in the Ascension Parish Development Code, Appendix 11, to add a new zoning designation for Conservation 5, C5, by revision of the Ascension Parish zoning map.
The purpose of this ordinance is to revise language in the Development Code in Appendix 11 of the Unified Land Development Code, whereas Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body within this jurisdiction, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and whereas this code was incorporated as Appendix 11 Development Code of the Parish Unified Land Development Code adopted December 17, 2009, and be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Development Code in Appendix 11 of the Unified Land Development Code is hereby amended as follows. These changes are adopted as follows. See attached Exhibit A, severability. In the event that any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provision and should not affect the validity of the remaining portion of the ordinance. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. Exhibit A, adoption. this ordinance having been submitted to a vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing by Mr. Catalani,
Second.
second by Mr. Lawler. Motion to close by Mr. Mason, second by Mr. Catalani.
Motion moved.
Motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Catalani, second by Mr. Mason. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. 9Q, reading of an ordinance to amend Appendix 1 zoning tables of Ascension Parish Unified Land Developmental Code, LDC, to add a new zoning designation of Conservation 5, C5.
The purpose of this ordinance is to revise language in the permitted uses by district zoning table in Appendix 1 of the Unified Land Development Code to add Conservation 5 to the district zoning table. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local government subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution, 1974. And whereas the parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body within this jurisdiction, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and whereas this code is incorporated as Appendix 1, zoning tables of the Parish Unified Land Development Code, adopted February 18, 2021, and be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the permitted uses by a district zoning table in Appendix 1 of the Unified Land Development Code is hereby amended as follows. These changes are adopted as follows. See zoning tables Exhibit A. Severability. In the event any portions of this ordinance ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. Exhibits and land use table, Appendix 1, adopting this ordinance having been submitted to vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open the public hearing by Mr. Robert,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mason. Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Robert,
Second.
second by Mr. Mason. And I will ask that we make the same amendment to this table that we previously made on the PUD.
Motion to change the PUD to, change it
Yeah,
to
you're-
PUD.
Is it for the transmission towers?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, same one. That we changed it to conditional use CU for the transmission towers.
Second.
Okay, we have an amendment by Mr. Lawler to change the transmission towers from PUD to CU, a second by Mr. Robert. So,
Motion
is
to
there any
move the
objection to the amendment?
ordinance. Motion to move the ordinance as amended.
I have to do them separate. Okay. Yeah, I gotta do them separate. Any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, so moved. Now I entertain a motion to move the ordinance.
Motion to move.
Second.
A motion to move by Mr. Cannavaletti, a second by Mr. Lawler. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Item 10A, executive session, resolution to file suit against the state of Louisiana, Office of Community Development to enjoy improper allocation of community development block grant mitigation funds related to the 2016 flood. And I will need a roll call, Madam Secretary, to
Councilman
enter
Robert.
executive session.
Councilman Lambert. Yes. Councilman Cagnalotti.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Chairman Malafalt.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
We are in executive session. Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to reconvene.
Motion to reconvene?
Have a motion to reconvene by Mr. Canilotti, a second by Mr. Mason. The Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the administration to explore and, if necessary, to approve the filing of a lawsuit as related to this matter.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lawler.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Canilotti. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Item 10B, in executive session, Caldwell Young versus Ascension Parish, suit number 133046B, approval of settlement balance.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Canilotti. Roll call, please, Ms. Secretary.
Councilman Robert? Councilman Turner? Councilman Lambert? Councilman Lawler?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolotti?
Yes.
Councilman Mason? Vice Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Wassall?
Yes. All right, we good, Kay? Have a motion to reconvene by Mr. Mason.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cagnolotti. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the requested settlement amount.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Mason. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. 10C, in executive session, Shaw Construction Dower Sewer Project, discussion of prospective litigation.
Second.
Motion to enter an executive session by Mr. Mason, second by Mr. Canilotti. Roll call, please, Ms. Secretary.
Councilman Robert? Councilman Turner? Councilman Lambert? Councilman Lawler?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolotti?
Yes.
Councilman Mason? Vice Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Wassall?
Yes. All right, Kay.
Motion to reconvene, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion to reconvene by Mr. Catinelli, a second by Mr. Mason. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve settlement of this matter for $652,000.00.
I have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Lambert. Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. And, so item 11A was taken care of in the previous motion from the DC, executive session which concerns Shaw, so there is, no action to be taken on 11A.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Mr. Catinelli and a second by Mr. Lawler. We are adjourned.